local elections are the chance to vote for change in your community, vote for change in your neighbourhood, vote for change in your high street, vote for a Labour council that will work hand in hand with a Labour government on our plan for change. Not for parties that continue to put themselves before the country. And I'm not just talking about the Tories. I'm talking about reform as well. They say they want to run the country. They can't even run themselves. You can literally fit their MPs now in the back of a cab, but they still don't know where they're going. They talk the language of workers' rights. They talk it all right, online, sometimes on the doorstep. But what do? They voted against banning hire and refire. They voted against scrapping exploitative zero-hour contracts. They voted against sick leave and maternity pay. That's what they do. And what about the NHS? They want to charge people for using our NHS. They claim to be the party of patriotism. I'll tell you this, there's nothing patriotic about fawning over Putin. No, they will not deliver the change for working people they need. They'll not deliver change for Britain.
During Labour's local election campaign launch, Keir Starmer took a jab at Reform UK, saying, "They say they want to run the country. They can't even run themselves. You can literally fit their MPs in the back of a cab, yet they still don't know where they're going." It's the kind of soundbite that might get a few cheap laughs. But when you strip away the theatrics, what you're left with is a classic political deflection, mocking numbers instead of confronting ideas. Yes, Reform UK is a small party, but so was every major political movement at one point in history. Being small doesn't mean you're wrong. Often it means you're ahead of your time. If we measured political credibility by parliamentary seats alone, Brexit would never happen. But it did, largely thanks to voices like Reform Mercs, who had the guts to speak the uncomfortable truth while the establishment stuck their heads in the sand. So who really is lost? Starmer's smug dismissal shows just how out of touch Labour has become. People across the country are tired of polished speeches, hollow promises, and a political class that talks down to them. Reform UK doesn't play by those rules. They speak plainly. They speak for the everyday Brit who feels ignored by a system that caters to global elites, not local communities. Whether it's mass immigration, bloated public spending, or the rise of woke censorship, Reform UK tackles the issues head-on without apology.
Well, that's it, but it's about to go from bad to worse, Mike. And, the British Empire, the whole empire was built on free trade, and that's what made it so great. And now we're being hit with these tariffs. I mean, what Trump's trying to do is stimulate business enterprise in the United States.
Right.
So he thinks by imposing these tariffs, it'll force companies to set up in America. But that could take years. And by that stage, we could be already in the midst of World War III.
My goodness me, you really are a pessimist, aren't you?
I know, I am a pessimist.
I mean, what do you think? So what's going to come first, the world's economic collapse or World War III? I mean, come on.
I don't know. Well, look, it makes us very vulnerable, okay? And don't forget, Britain doesn't have the EU to shoulder the responsibility. Britain is on its own, essentially. And,
but that's a good thing, isn't it? Because he's more likely to put more tariffs on the EU than he is on Britain in the end.
Possibly, and as Ursula von der Leyen said, she's going to retaliate. So if Iran and Russia see this unrest with it, between the Western world, they're going to attack because our defense budget is down. We really don't have the resources to go to war, so we could end up. Yeah, exactly. And it's not going to hit China as bad, So it's really going to be, I think it's going to be terrible. Why do you think it's going to be good? What's the positive that you see?
Well, the positive is not so much a positive as it's not a negative, you know. At the end of the day, you know, we've been imposing tariffs on America for quite a long time. America is now imposing some tariffs on us. And it's a negotiable, I mean, it's not very often that I would ever give any credence to Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary. But as he says, it's an open conversation. So he might put these tariffs on because it's Liberation Day, and he might take them off the next day. I mean, look what he did with Mexico. Look what he did with Canada. You know, one minute he put tariffs on and the next day he took them off, and there's an awful lot of people that jump to Donald Trump's tune, particularly in the media. They get all worked up about something and then suddenly it doesn't happen, or he reverses it, and he can do that.
True.
But you know, for example, Donald Trump is quite right to say America doesn't really sell any cars very much into Europe, but an awful lot of cars get sold out of Europe into America. So he sees that as a kind of I don't know, an unfair system, and so that's why in America an awful lot of American cars only get sold in America, because they make their own cars and they buy them. And I don't think there's anything wrong with protecting an industry. I mean, we've lost pretty much our entire car industry because we've allowed imports to completely flood the market from Southeast Asia and China. So we now basically hardly make any cars. The only cars we now make are high-end cars, really, which we sell to rich countries like America. Jaguar Land Rover, Bentley, Rolls-Royce, you know, Lotus, all of those kind of expensive cars. And if people don't buy those cars now because there's a tariff on them, I would be surprised, because most people who buy those cars will buy them anyway, and they're cheaper. They're already cheaper in America. You can buy a Land Rover in America for less money than you buy one here.
Political journalist Joanna Bell recently warned that the economy is about to go from bad to worse as Donald Trump gears up to announce major new tariffs. It's the kind of alarmist rhetoric we've come to expect from establishment commentators who treat free trade as an unquestionable good, regardless of how uneven, exploitative, or strategically disastrous it has become for American workers. But let's be clear. Tariffs, especially under Trump's economic philosophy, aren't about isolationism. They're about rebalancing a global system that has long prioritized multinational corporate profits over domestic prosperity. For decades, American manufacturing has been hollowed out by trade deals that shipped jobs overseas, empowered adversarial economies like China, and left entire towns in the Rust Belt devastated. Trump's tariffs are a signal that those days are over. Critics like Bell may panic at the thought of rising prices or trade wars, but they fail to acknowledge the deeper, long-term rot. The U.S. has become dependent on foreign supply chains, especially in critical sectors like semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and even steel. Strategic tariffs are a tool, not a silver bullet, but a starting point for reclaiming economic sovereignty. The same experts who mocked Trump's tariffs back in 2018 were stunned when they saw the resulting resurgence in domestic steel production and job growth in protected industries. Moreover, tariffs can be used as leverage to bring hostile trading partners to the negotiating table, something Trump proved during his first term. Instead of echoing panic about short-term market jitters, journalists like Joanna Bell should be asking why a supposedly free trade system has left America more unequal, more vulnerable, and more beholden to foreign powers. If a reset is painful, it's only because the system has been rigged for so long. Trump's tariffs aren't a gamble. They're a course correction.